To get out of bed, it definitely helps knowing that the cause is bigger than I am and I'm getting out of bed for more than just myself. And it's not just about getting out of bed, but it does help the drive for the passion project with the South Pacific cacao that Brian and I are doing.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Cacao is one of the most sought after and traded commodities on the planet. Mostly grown in third world countries in tropical zones, it is consumed in large amounts in the first world in the form of chocolate. There are not too many of us on the planet that aren't lured by the sweet, indulgent experience that chocolate delivers. But as we come to grips with problems in our food chain, sustainability and ethics, what impact is that having on cacao? Jessica Pedemont is the owner of Artisan and the co-owner and director of South Pacific Cacao. Jessica, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to talk to you. You've built an amazing career around an incredible product and you're one of Australia's best. What lured you to the sweet side of things?
Oh, that's really kind of you. Yeah, look, I love all food. I love savoury. I was a chef first, and then, you know, as a chef, they always sort of see you as an all-rounder making petit fours to dinner rolls, and that's sort of, I think, how you start stretching your other muscles in the food chain. And I always like all of it. I still like making, you know, pasta and, you know, smoking meats and things like that. But as a full-time job, you know, I find myself very much in that sweet realm, even though they do use cacao for some savoury things. I just finished decanting and scraping out a machine where we've done a spiced hot chocolate bar, and it's got chili, cinnamon, vanilla, smoked salt, black pepper. So 75%. And the beans are from an area called Waimarai in Makira in the Solomon Islands. So all of our farmers are award-winning generally, so it's all focused on the farmers. We don't grow it ourselves. We do have a connection in the farms. Brian Atkin, our other co-owner, co-director, he has some farms in the Sols. His father's originally from there. I've been over there, worked over there, done women and youth programs over there. Obviously not going anywhere at the moment, and the trip last year's fallen through along with everybody else's. But I just, you know, love what I do and do what I love. So, you know, they talk about that, do what you like and you don't feel like you work a day. Don't get me wrong, I'm not afraid of hard work, definitely grind. Lots of grinding. We've got machines that run through the night grinding.
There's lots of elements to talk about with you, but food. The connection that you have with the South Pacific, can we start with that? Tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, there's a lot of lineages why it made so much sense. Obviously, the smaller global mile footprint. We are growing it in the Daintree area, as many would know. It's still a new commodity to be doing that there, and obviously people are taking care of that there. I lived and worked in Hawaii in a cacao plantation. I lived in one for a while. My transport was a golf buggy. It's the coolest. So, you know, you definitely have experience doing it in the first world country situation with harvesting and so forth as well. But like you said in your intro, it is often lesser developed countries, considered third world countries, lower socioeconomic situations. And they've got other ingredients we've been bringing over, like the gnarly nut, which I just absolutely love and adore. It's a bit like a pine nut cross cashew, maybe touch of macadamia. And for years we were bringing it from their duty free in our suitcases back because no one was bringing it here. And I'm just like, this is a crime. And I've used it at Fine Foods and different trade shows, and all the chefs, which are international, like, this is unreal. And I'm like, yes, these countries haven't had maybe a voice or an opportunity in the whole supply chain to be able to bring their product to a global presence, which we have had many blessings in Australia. So, you know, we brought in 14 kilos last year, and it might seem like a small amount, but for a little artisan chocolate shop that has a lot of other ingredients, freshness is paramount, and also your funds to do that. But also getting back to the whole South Pacific situation, not just the global miles, the quality, like their beans are winning awards internationally, so that it's a very good quality product. They're very small when you compare a massive amount of cacao coming from like the Ivory Coast and Ghana and Africa and all these sorts of areas. But they're anywhere that equator belt, for those people listening that aren't aware, you just look at that equator belt and that's very much where cacao is. If you look at sort of the world map and look at Hawaii and look at Australia, you sort of got the top and the bottom of those equator bands of where it stops growing, because it is quite affected by its environment. So if you see it anywhere else, it's probably in a, like a plant conservatory where they've recreated its living environments. So we've also brought in vanilla from Manus, undeodorized cocoa butter from P&G, and in Bougainville from Queen Emma, and also the powder, which is just sensational. Because you get a better quality bean, you can make undeodorized cocoa butters and undutched cocoa powders and have a really delicious product to put in your sponges or whatever other products you're making with it. If you've got a good one ingredient, there's nothing it can stand behind. Whereas the bulk commodity beans, so there's different sort of beans. We're in the premium sun-dried naturally organic bean market, which of course you pay a higher price for. That's another thing that we're promoting as a part of being, I guess, a voice for the people in this region. And I shut my cooking school, not because I knew COVID was coming, which is kind of cool that I did that, but because I saw that, and I know, who knew, the tsunami. I sort of just saw the energy that I was putting into essentially pampering the privilege that can pay, how many hundreds of dollars just for a group experience. Yes, I still do privates. Yes, I still do some consulting in that way. But even with that COVID thing that happened, we haven't done a class at our workshop since mid-March.
Wow.
That's a whole other... Yeah, I know. And look, imagine if I had the school, I'd have a whole location that is essentially gathering dust. But I looked at it as the energy... I believe, at least on this earth, I've only got one life. So to get out of bed, it definitely helps knowing that the cause is bigger than I am and I'm getting out of bed for more than just myself. And it's not just about getting out of bed, but it does help the drive for the passion project with the South Pacific cacao that Brian and I are doing. So he provides beans around the world, Europe, North America, other parts of Australia, New Zealand, to bean to bar craft chocolate makers. That there's the purists that are all about 2-ingredient chocolate, which is essentially just beans, no extra cocoa butter, and then also the sugar, just plain sugar. But I mean, there are people that eat 100%, and there's people that eat roasted beans. So you've got a lot to. We've probably got about 16 different flavoured bars just from its origins. All of our stuff all of our machinery is technically vegan. We don't use any soy lecithins, binding agents, stabilisers, and we do play around with the raw organic Bundaberg sugar. It was the only organic raw sugar that I could find in the country. And obviously, we cusp on a part of the South Pacific, but also we love using a lot of Australian ingredients as well. We're lucky in Australia that our diverse land can create so many ingredients. If people give it a go, as we all know, it's quite incredible with all of our sort of environment. And then what else are we doing? Yeah, we use a lot of coconut instead, so we brought in some beautiful island coconut. We found majority of the coconut getting supplied, even organic, in Australia was generally coming from the Philippines or Sri Lanka, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't really go with the whole South Pacific theme. And they've got some really beautiful coconut over there, and a lot of coconut Pacific products coming over. It could be the virgin coconut oil, it could be the flour, it could be coconut comes in so many formats, even more so than ever in our awareness. So we got some beautiful island coconut over, and the flavour and the fragrance and the freshness, it's unreal. It's really quite spectacular. It does pay off when you go to all this effort of importing your own things. One of the things we noticed when COVID hit, a lot of people said, how's your supply chain of getting ingredients? And we actually, touch wood, hadn't been affected because we brought it all in ourselves. The stuff that we were having trouble with would have been more ingredients that we didn't bring in ourselves and our suppliers supplied us with. And so every 5 items we might ask for from anybody, the average was sort of getting 3 to 4 of those ingredients, and then there's that chase to get the other sort of 20-40%. And because, you know, you might have a variety of suppliers getting different ingredients, especially with CA, Chocolate Artisan. We do a lot of like our signature Christmas cakes. We've just had Christmas. We do the anglaise, the cherries. We prepare our dried fruits a year in advance in all the brandy, the honey, all local. There's a lot of other things that CA does that SPC doesn't. So, you know, you're managing all of that. And before COVID happened, we basically got the keys to this new place mid-November, after all the, you know, you're looking for this place, you're looking for that place, something falls through, it's not the right time, so on and so forth. And I had 3 locations, so I was packing up one, putting storage into another, running another, getting back to work pretty much full-time after having a baby. And so, you know, that's life, right? What's happening now?
Well, we can get into the impact that COVID had shortly, but I just want to touch on the South Pacific a bit more.
Yeah.
And, you know, you said that they're producing award-winning cacao.
Yes.
What makes it so special?
Look, it's very important from the very beginning, and, yeah, I'm going to talk like a farmer. It's the soil. The soil, its environment, you know, how is the plants being looked after? It's a tree. And if it's in good stead, it can produce up to twice a year. It can fruit and flower at the same time, which is considered unusual for some plants. Also, it can produce from the branches and the trunk, which is also considered quite unusual for some plants. It's quite a unique, you know, that fruit of the god tree. And so with the South Pacific, it grows natural. It grows wild there, just like all these other things that can give them good stead with some sort of return commodity-wise. So if it's growing well and it's harvested at the right time, you know, not underripe, not overripe, at the right time, then it goes straight into the fermentation stage. And that, you know, look, you'll read a lot of textbooks, you hear a lot of info, but you need to give the time that it needs. So if it's 3 days or it's a week, you know, that is up to it being handled at the time. It needs to happen right away at the farm, generally, or not far away. Once it's gone through the fermentation stage, which has to be watched closely and evenly, then sun drying is optimal. This is another really big thing. I'm glad you asked about it. One of the big problems that I noticed is with, you know, not just the South Pacific, but underdeveloped countries, is smoke drying. It taints the beans. It generally needs to be stoked by a human themselves, so breathing in the smoke. I mean, chefs back in the day working off coal ovens, wood-fired ovens permanently were passing away of an average of 45 years old. Like, the smoke does not improve your health. So these smoke dryers need to be running, you know, sometimes for multiple days on end, day and night. So someone's got to breathe that in. They've got to chop wood down. That's not sustainable for the environment either. And the smoke dryers have a lifespan as well. So there's nothing there that is good for sustainability, really, and they get a very poor price. So bulk commodity beans often just get used for massive commercial chocolate. So think a lot of sugar, a lot of milk powder, a lot of, you know, emulsifiers, binding agents to make that stuff work. Almost chocolate confectionery work. We don't need to name names here, you know. I definitely don't need any letters in the mail. Also, cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is sought after by the beauty industry, hair, makeup, not just to mention other food. So couverture chocolate has extra cocoa butter added. So the natural fat content of a bean can be anywhere. A lean bean is sort of 30% definitely a lean bean percentage fat-wise, and a nice fatty bean would be around 50 to 60% natural fat content. You can only get that checked if you get it, checked, in the sort of that lab situation. Some people go off claiming all sorts of things, and people start claiming lineage as well. But going back to the island, so let's say we've done a fantastic fermentation, the drying situation. So naturally sun-dried is definitely premium, or you can use a Grain Pro bubble dryer where it produces air that blows over it. Because this is the thing, where most of the cacao grows is quite tropical. So flash rains, all sorts of situations like this, very humid. This is very important in controlling this process. So they have some permanent huts, or they put it over covers, or they'll have it out in the beds and push it under when the rain comes. But with the Grain Pro bubble dryer, and Grain Pro produce hermetically sealed bags, I'll get to that stuff later, but it's worldwide available. They use it a lot for coffee and other grain commodities, for storage and things like this. So they produced a Grain Pro bubble dryer. So you put the beans that need drying. If you have the extra charger which takes the sun for solar panels and then produces, some storage of the energy so it can run a few days, which is what might be needed when it's raining and it's nighttime and so on. And plus, a lot of these countries, they're working off diesel power generators at the best of times for the best hotels. So electricity is another thing that people need to think about in these sorts of countries. So if you've got a Grain Pro bubble dryer, it just blows the air over it. You sort of rake it underneath the cover to keep it turning over so it's drying evenly. And that can also yield a very, very good quality bean as well. So natural sun dry or this way is going to give you a really good premium bean. A lot of the characteristics of the genetics and the terroir will be able to come through. Then once it's dried properly, which is at about 8% moisture content, if it's too low, when the beans are travelling, they can just break and they'll end up being just a bunch of husk and nibs at the final stop once they get thrown around here, there, everywhere. And then it's up to the person at the other end who is generally roasting and then takes it to their next step. So we're receiving it dried in the Grain Pro hermetically sealed bags to prevent mold development, moth development, any sort of bug situation, reabsorption of moisture. So we sort of work with everybody over there closely with all the farmers that we're working with and so forth, and that community about the education. So education is obviously quite key here. And when we do Soul Choc every year, which obviously didn't happen last year, I don't know about this year, but stay tuned, where they bring together, it's almost like a conference. Farmers, people come worldwide, they enter their beans get judged, they take the top 10, now top 20, turn it into chocolate, judge it again, and that then themselves can win awards and props and equipment for their farms and so on. But also the recognition and also the education. So a lot of these people are coming from little towns in the middle of nowhere. One of the beans that we get is from an island region called Tomoto, and the farmer, his name's Philip Lepping. He's one of the winners from 2018. And when the Spaniards came looking for King Solomon's treasure back in the 15th, 16th century, they landed on this little island called Tomoto and planted some of the original lineage beans. So it's quite a historical. We got a couple of bags last year, and it's so different compared to, say, another farmer's beans. All of our bags are divided, all of our batches, everything's recorded. So it's kind of going to that craft wine, craft beer, craft coffee sort of movement where people are like, where is it coming from? What makes it different? But if you don't do the correct fermentation, you don't do the correct harvesting, the storing, in those sorts of environments, it can reabsorb moisture, get mold, and then you've got a problem. So there's quite a lot of work that has to happen and has to be done before you even receive a good quality bean that the end person's paying for, before they turn it into anything.
Well, you've had Chocolate Artisan for well over a decade. What's some of the highlights of that time with that business that you've had? Yeah,
it's been a great platform as a journey, working nationally and internationally. Now, obviously, I'm just working in Sydney, really. We send our chocolate now in the mail, which I'd never done in 13 years. And to me,
Wow.
the concept was like putting my food in a takeaway container and booting it out the door. Like, psychologically, you've got a lot of things to overcome because, well, there is choices, but really that attitude of you don't have a choice. How are you going to get it to people when you shut your doors for 4 months and you don't have anyone come in the front door? But yeah, highlights definitely having an opportunity to work overseas, and, you know, have a business where people can contact you and you can, you know, potentially collaborate with other businesses, which is a lot of fun. I enjoy all the trade shows, which we don't get to do at the moment, working with different businesses like that, different machinery. It's quite fun. We've got a lot of Italian FBM machinery here and Unox for ovens and stuff, cold line and they're just using some of the best equipment on the market is quite a beautiful thing. It's, you know, you've got other staff members here all the time. No, it's great. You know, you work really hard and you appreciate what you've got, and, you know, you get to train other people and get to meet other people, try new things. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. We've done a lot of things. We brought out a women's chef's jacket range, which, you know, because most of my life I was just wearing a size small men's and my shoulders were down at my elbows, and, you know, it was just, I don't know. I came up in the industry when my employers were getting benefits from the government because I was a female. Oh, there's a lot of things you come to learn about with the trade. And I'm still friends with my first employers. I saw them only last week for coffee by chance. I'm friends with them. You know, they were the ones that took time with me and showed me the ropes when I was 15, and that was, you know, you learn a lot of life lessons. But yeah, I kind of feel like Chocolate Artisan will be there when Armageddon comes and goes. Like, I'll still be in the corner peddling, making chocolate for people. But everything, all my spare time and all my time that I make for the social is quite important to me. I sort of look at that as a legacy that can continue when I'm not here, and that is obviously quite meaningful. Yeah.
Is there something
that
is there something that you produce that really stands out and typifies sort of what you do with chocolate?
I've got a few. We've got a lot of products. I try to please everyone in the sense that we try to cater all food groups, whether it's white milk, dark, fruity, nutty, unusual. You know, we try to cater, and we do custom. So we custom make stuff for people as well, whether it's white labelled or a co-collaboration, et cetera, et cetera. We were doing a lot of great work before COVID hit as well, but like, there's some people that aren't even in business anymore that we were talking to. So, you know, there's the good, the bad and the ugly, but everyone's just trying to move through what it is. One of the things that we're very proud of is our Christmas fruit cake pudding. It's a total bastardisation of a cake and a pudding. If we put this in the Easter show, I would be disqualified and everyone would tell me to quit my day job. But for me, you can heat it up like a pudding. You can have it like a cake. We prepare the fruits a year in advance. It's all local honey. It's single origin wheat that we will use. You know, the herby spices, pepicea butter, the cacao husk from the bean. The husk is probably the pot of gold, really, that we're sitting on. It is the most beautiful, fragrant, delicious, nutritious product. And some people think of it as a byproduct, but, you know, there's this expression in Japanese called multi-nai, where it's almost like an equilibrium and a synergy of, they're both really the same. The chocolate, the cacao nib could be considered the byproduct in this case. So you produce about, you know, 15 to 25% of husk from the bean when you do the roasting, cracking, winnowing process. So cracking and winnowing is where you separate the husk from the outside, from the nib, which is the inside bit. And I put it in this really yummy spiced cookie biscuit business that I make, and I put it in the cake, and some friends put it in their panettone crust recently, and I've had another friend put it in his sourdough and brioche recipe, and we're working with some beer brewery craft people that are putting the husk in the vats when they do their sort of preparation to make beer, whiskey as well. I mean, you can make tea with it. It's a lovely herbal barley sort of clear tea where it's full of theobromine, full of good for mental clarity and focus, going back to that superfood ingredient that it's quite well known for. A lot of people think there's a lot of caffeine in chocolate, but it's actually full of theobromine. There's trace amounts of caffeine, but particularly in the husk, not much at all. So very, very good for you.
You mentioned that in November you got the keys to a new facility, and you opened a retail at the end of January. What sort of impact has this sort of whole COVID pandemic had on your operations?
2019, we got the keys. And we started wholesale production 2nd of Jan. End of Jan, we started formal retail. And, because we had to transition the other businesses, and you've got to your monopoly and jigsaw puzzle of tools and equipment and staff and yourself and so on, and just sort of make a smooth transition. And we were tracking really well. Absolute sunshine, rainbows and lollipops. It was just super grand, super grand. And then obviously the whole world's hit by a bus, and the government's like, help flatten the curve. And I was like, right, okay, well, Easter's on the horizon. It's mid-March. Having our doors open will not help flatten the curve. So what can we do from our little position? And that was to not let people physically in. And we all went home for a week, and then I was like, I need to go back in there. But we had a lot of staff with pre-medical curses. So, due diligence. I'm like, you need to stay home, and you need to stay home, and you need to stay home, and I know you'll want to come help. So I was essentially, isolating at home, going to work on my own, working here on my own till midnight sometimes, and then going back again. So I felt pretty safe. I felt like, what we were producing was pretty safe. But we fortunately got picked up by the Sunrise Show, and they obviously were wanting to spread some goodwill amongst the people, and were focusing on businesses. I don't remember how they got hold of me, but they came on Good Friday, and the weather guys here, and the whole crew's here, and we're all social distancing. We're all talking about who's allowed to stand where, and the film crew, and everyone had to be very, and those guys, I mean, they get scrutinised by the whole country watching the show. So they're like, okay, well, if you're here and you pass to me on this, and it was interesting because we've done this stuff before, but not during that situation either. But we got fortunately, with Easter, we got a big surge anyway, because people kind of went, oh, Jess has gone online, never done it before. Like, we finally, it's good. I will continue to do this. We just have to watch the weather. But we got another surge from that. Broadsheet did a piece on us. That was good timing. That didn't happen till later because everyone sort of got swamped with the situation. And then SBS Food did a thing. And, it's wonderful to have people take a genuine interest and contact, and we do something, or they want to do something. But to get it happening during this time was even more of a blessing every time, because we've just started something. We weren't getting any support from the government. We weren't expecting anything. Nothing really rolled out for a while anyway. Every week it feels like a small little book and a chapter in the greater series. So, our little hot seat had plenty going on, and I think with our small team, we all really care about each other and care about what we're doing, and then our little communities around that with our families and so forth. So we were listening to all the news and what's good and what's not, and we have all of the new procedures in place with what we're allowed to do now. But yeah, we'll keep doing online. I don't know when we'll do classes again. Most of our customers came from around the country and sometimes overseas. We do a lot of professional courses as well as just the factory tour situation. It's not really worth it in the grand schemes, and we didn't want to put people out. Like, we offered refunds right away or whatever people wanted to do that were already booked in. We would do a lot of off-sites, like I taught at other schools or other, sort of TAFE and trade shows and so forth. Just sort of got to go with the flow and see where it takes us. You can't hold on to running water, so we just got to sort of go with it and see how we can make the best of it. We did a lot of subscriptions as well, and that's another thing we're rolling out this year is our become a chocolatier at home. We did some for Christmas, and we did about 80, and people could do add-ons.
Wow.
And so they got to have that experience at home. We did a pre-recorded video. We gave them a link. They got to watch it privately, and I took them through how to make this chocolate Christmas tree using the social chocolate, using Australian freeze-dried fruit, which is produced in Australia, very fresh. They're really awesome. Using Australian produce and produced in the Yarra Valley, freeze-dried. Delicious, delicious stuff. So everything that we used often has a lot of providence and integrity, and we leave ourselves really open to try new things and learn more things. And it's one of the most exciting things when you get a new ingredient as a chef and get to try it. It's like trying new food, isn't it? Culturally.
You mentioned a little earlier your interest in chocolate came from wanting to stretch your muscles as a chef, and you've also liked to stretch your muscles in another way throughout your life with martial arts.
Sounds hilarious. Okay, I didn't know we were going to segue here, but that's not unusual. Everyone loves to talk about my background as a professional fighter, yeah.
Yeah.
I did get to represent Australia in a few different disciplines. And, I've got one of those black belts as well. Don't know how I would do these days. I don't really get to train like I used to, but I started off in martial arts when I actually started cooking professionally. I started them both at 15. Obviously, felt no correlation between the two. I always did competitive sports as a child. Like, I did everything. I just sort of threw myself into everything. I was on the softball team doing reps, and I was like, okay, what are the rules? Because I'd go to tryouts and I'd get in because I could fudge my way athletically through a lot of stuff and just have a good time. But martial arts, I did gymnastics as a kid. I didn't know I was supposed to be tall, so by 14, when a female reaches her peak, she starts snapping bones and popping knees and things like that, and popping shoulders and stuff. A boy is 18. So anyway, so I realised I couldn't get to do that anymore, and I started growing taller and taller. And then it took me about a year to find a sport where I felt that complete physical exhaustion, like every part of my body used itself like it used to for so much of my younger life. And yeah, it started off with kickboxing, and I ended up doing Muay Thai. I ended up fighting internationally, and I ended up, getting prize money, which is not much, but the novelty, it's a bit of a novelty. And then I always loved, I was introduced to pankratio, which is one of the first Olympic sports that started in ancient Greece, which of course wrestling is a part of that. So stand-up, it's like stand-up submission till takedown. So a lot of these, different jiu-jitsus and karates and things like that, they've all got elements of a lot of them. And then obviously it involves submissions as well, like all your takedowns and stuff. So that was quite cool. It's like a physical game of chess, with wrestling to me anyway. So there's some really smart people. Like it's quite a good sport. And you know, look, Olympic wrestling, I didn't think I had the body type for that. I always thought wrestlers were short and stocky. There's actually quite a few famous wrestlers that are really quite tall. I just showed you how young I was. I'm just going to put that disclaimer out there. But then I'd retired, I'd snapped a knee, I had my ACL replaced, just in training, you know, when you train with the younger ones that don't know so much, you can have freak injuries. It happens. It's like wild cards. So anyway, I recovered from that. That was cool. And then I just thought I'd train for fitness. And just like most fighters, they come out of retirement, and the reason for me was the coach that taught on Saturdays. He used to be the scout for the USSR back in the day for wrestling. I mean, everyone knows Russia's like, you know, Russia's Russia with wrestling. So I, you know, he sort of pulled me aside. It was like a sermon. Classes would go for 3-4 hours. And he'd have someone to translate. He knew some English, but he'd always have one of his Russian boys there to translate. And then, you know, after 20 minutes I had to be briefed before he would even let me on the mat to train, because he didn't know my face. What chefs gets to go to training on a Saturday morning? I mean, like, it just doesn't happen. So anyway, I happened to show up, and I'm running around on the mat, going through the motions, you know, 20 minutes into the warm-up, and he pulled me aside and he's like, how old are you? And I was like, 29. He's like, you go to the next Olympics. And I just was like, you know, next few days you go to bed, you're thinking about what he said, and next minute, you know, you train hardcore, no other disciplines for the same month. 4 months later, you go to Oceania in Samoa and you come third.
Wow.
You just go, oh, you know. So I did that till about 33 when I snapped a couple injuries. Exciting. I don't really think I had that many in my time, but I snapped a couple of things in my ankle at a Glasgow qualifier for the Commonwealth in Canberra. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to heal in time for Glasgow. So, you know, let's just live it up. Where's the glass of champagne or something? I don't know. You have a good time. So now it's just really training for fitness if I can with my spare time. We don't have enough spare time.
Well, you've been a hell of a fighter, and now you're standing up for the growers and people in the South Pacific and producers. What's your hope with social this year, now that you've got it all off the ground and running?
I know. Well, I pretty much dedicated 12 months. Like, I donate all my time, I donate all my equipment. The social very much pays its way, like for its beans and, you know, its staff and other sort of overheads that it has. But we definitely would like it to be more established and on its own feet. And we sell online, we sell to some other retailers, we do some white labelling, we do some wholesale for some other professionals. And then obviously we sell some stuff through the shops. We can't really do any experiences yet. That's off the cards for now. But it can definitely still have a presence in education with the promotion of what we're doing. We can't go over there right now. That's sort of off the cards as well. But if we can keep building a more steady platform, because, you know, there are still a lot of people that we can go and do an off-site experience for corporates or educational experiences for high schools or other children with understanding about a lot of different potential conversations there with not just the social, but education about food and ingredients itself and that whole ethos of that cycle. There's quite a bit there. More awareness and you know, we would like to, the more impact we can have, the more we can do, the more support that we can grow it, the more people we can help faster. It's a different time right now with the new COVID and not being able to go over and do those programs that we had done before. You know, maybe we can do some things online. Like when I went over there, they were, the women and youth they were pretty much just, well, any of them in general were just using cocoa powder that was re-imported. I know people hearing that will kind of just be a bit beside themselves with that. I was a bit beside myself with it myself, but when I went over there, I taught them how to make like a granita out of the pulp, which is super tropical mangosteen, lychee, rambutan profile, because of course they don't have an ice cream machine. Like at first I started talking to the hotel about doing a sorbet. I'm like, has anyone got a machine? And they didn't. I'm like, right, we're going to do a granita. This is something you can do yourself, and showed them how to do that. And that was obviously quite mind-blowing for them. Then I took some of the nibs and the gnarly nut and the local coconut and made a brittle with it, and then that was quite delicious to them. But then I blitzed it up and made like a super rustic, nutty, chocolatey, coconutty profile paste, which to you and I, we could eat straight, put on toast or drizzle it over fruit, just as another way of eating something that is theirs. And then something else that I had done was I had made chocolate and took moulds over and tempered and piped things into polycarbonate moulds and demoulded chocolates for them to try chocolate in their own form from their own beans from their country, which I know the global miles, it sort of came back around again, but a lot of them had never tried anything like that before. So showing them how to do things with their own product through education, they can do it in their own market stalls or their own homes or their own direct market home-based businesses. They did that at the university at Sinu in Honiara, which is the capital of the Solomon. Doing things like that is so grounding for me, and it helps bring you back to the cause of like why we're doing this. I had someone come into the shop early on in the piece of being opened and said, oh yes, we're a social enterprise. We grow vanilla and we give farmers bags of rice while their crops grow for them to eat food. And I was like, oh dear God, I couldn't wait till they leave. And then I spoke to Brian. I was like, we cannot be pigeonholed in these sorts of positions. And there is also an abuse with what something is and what are we actually doing. And it's about that conversation that we can all have. Yes, there's that feel-good, fuzzy business. People can buy a bar of chocolate and know they're helping others. Yes, this is true. But it's not why we're doing it. There's a much bigger reason there. And the more we can help people, it's simple things like even sending books back in education. It's one of the things that you cannot even leave at a Goodwill shop here, all the different brands that do Goodwill and resell things. You can't give them encyclopedia sets. There's poor people in these undeveloped countries that you can send things back, whether it's clothing or even books, where they want things for their libraries, where people can read and get a basic, a little bit more education. So there is a lot more that we can be doing, and the more people that want to be involved, it doesn't have to be just buying chocolate. You could be getting involved in other parts of the chain that makes something move. There's a lot of things that I don't have expertise in that other people do that, want to help. And, that's a good thing, whether it's, the South Pacific cause that we're doing or something else. So, yeah, the more we can do, the more people want to be involved. It's the conversation that creates other ideas that we're not even aware of something else that could be done.
Well, Jessica, what you're doing is extraordinary, and you're an amazing individual. Your life has been
so
fascinating to just hear glimpses of today. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds. Please keep in touch and look forward to hearing more about social, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, thank you so much, and I really love what you're doing. And I remember when it first came out, when the COVID wave hit, and I thought, what a good idea about bringing people together while we're sort of stranded as well, and having a podcast where everybody can sort of tune in and realise there's a lot more community going on, and hearing other people's stories has been so interesting, and it's been a very lovely company. So it's nice that you're still going, and I'm sure you're going from strength to strength. So thank you for having me on.
Well, we're here for good, hopefully, and we really appreciate those beautiful words. We'll talk again soon. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you. Take care.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.